بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Thank you very much for coming to our lecture, and may Allah forgive me and forgive all of us. Today's lecture is going to be about theology. Before going to the lecture, I would love to know if any of you studied theology before, Aqidah al-Kalam, or even the Islamic philosophy. Is there anyone? So you are very beginner to this subject, am I right? Okay, so in that case, let's start everything just from scratch. So we have something which called, maybe in English, maybe we may say, a map, or the map of the science. Okay, so just to see where theology is located, so we need to just very briefly look into the map of the science. Okay, and our way, inshallah, is going to be very ancient Islamic classical, okay, which maybe somehow has been derived from the ancient Greek, maybe methodology. Anyway, so we have whole of the science in the past centuries used to be called as philosophy. Okay, now philosophy has been separated from everything to be as, like we can say, separate subject. Okay, but before, everything used to be called as philosophy, but different branch of philosophy. Okay, so philosophy in the ancient period, maybe very early, you can say, stage of Abbasi period. So philosophy in our language would be translated as science, knowledge. Okay, so then knowledge to be split into 4 branches. Okay, the first branch is, you can say, the natural knowledge, and the second is non-natural knowledge. That's what is called theology, metaphysics, or behind the nature, okay, or unseen, or something which our physics will not be applicable. Okay, and then to go into them 2 subjects, we have 2 other equipment subjects. One called, we can say, the principles of a brain, or principles of, we can say, logic, we can say, analyzing. Okay, so that is the mantiq, as well as the second is, you can say, maths, and anything related to the numbers. So them are 4 main branches of the knowledge. Okay, so then, in terms of the theology, so theology is going to be the last ever. Okay, so the first one is, it is the science which teaches you how you should be using your brain. Okay, so in terms of the premises and conclusions and etc. Because for you to, for example, now we have physicians, okay, who are maybe making, you can say, some tests in some certain issue. For example, about atom. Okay, so for them to come to some conclusion, they observe the thing, and then after that they do set up a principle. Okay, but so for us, in order to get to that principle, we have to follow the correct procedure of analyzing. Am I right? So that is that, you can say, very initial or very basics of, you can say, the knowledge or the science. And after that, you have to handle the subject which is related to the numbers. Okay, it mainly, the main 2 branches of it is, one is related to the numbers and one is to the shapes, as well as the third one is acoustic. So it's mainly to do with the sounds. Okay, and then after that, so based on them 2 solid foundations, then you will go to the next step, which is the natural science. Okay, so maybe in our time, maybe our generation, for the last 100 years, we made just perfect progress on this branch of the knowledge. Okay, and even the very first one and very last one has been perfectly neglected. Why? Because we are putting all of our energy into this branch of the science, which is, you can say, natural science. So it will include geology, okay, and geography, okay, and all of the natural science. Okay, so, and I would say it's just, mashallah, it's just amazing progress. Okay, the written history that we do have in our time, the written history of a human being, I don't believe that we do have any progress which would equal to our progress of this one subject of this, you can say, knowledge. Okay, maybe before that non-written history, maybe they used to have something even better, but in terms of the histories that we do recognize, I don't believe that there was anything which is comparable to our, because our progress is just perfect, very high level progress. Anyway, theology, mainly it is a subject which speaks, so I would say it is anyone who wants to be physician of unseen, so he has to get engaged into the theology. Okay, so for example, in this natural science, we have something, the main principle, which is the principle of cause and effect. Okay, there are many surrounding principles. Okay, so the same thing is about the unseen world. Okay, that theology speaks about. Okay, and then theology, inshallah, we're going to look into some of the very, you can say, important corners, just to have an understanding of what theology speaks about. But before that, theology, as the same as the rest of the science, first of all, it speaks about the sources of an information. Okay, so do I have anyone who studies philosophy here in the Faculty of Philosophy? Please, can you put your hand up? Or theology even. Or do I have anyone who studies, anyone, do I have any students? Okay, anyway, that doesn't matter. Okay, so what is the source of information for the human being? How we get to some knowledge? Sorry? Reading. Okay, reading. Okay, anything else?
Listening.
Sorry?
Listening.
Listening. Okay.
Observation.
Sorry?
Observation.
Observation, okay. Communication.
Experiment.
Sorry?
Experiment.
Experimenting, okay.
Observing.
Observe, okay. Experimenting, observation, observing is, I think, same thing. Okay, so in terms of theology, because as a theologist, the scholar of theology, he actually will be sharing maybe 80% of source of knowledge with the rest of the subjects. So it is 5 senses, okay, as well as a brain, as well as some information from some reliable person. Okay, but then question, how you can use 5 senses, okay, to gain a knowledge of unseen. Isn't it a bit insane? Because we are talking about unseen, so it is God and you can say angels and jinnat and all of them type of issues. And then how you can use 5 senses. So is it something that I see here and then I compare what I see with something which is unseen? It's, you can say, ill understanding. Am I right? What do you think?
It's the heart.
Sorry?
It's the heart you can see. Heart.
Heart. Okay, how you can see with the heart?
Inspiration.
Spirit. Okay, so for example, when you look at me, or when someone looks at me, what does he see by the heart? It's a good issue actually, it's a good point. Thank you very much. We say, according to the theology, how we can use 5 senses in order to make some statement about unseen. The reason of that is, let's suppose that I'm in some place in the forest, and then I will see some footstep, but I didn't see the one who made that footstep. Am I right? So, for me, what I see, can it describe something that I did not see or not? So, the footstep, it gives me indication of 2 things. Am I right? First thing, that there was something that made this footstep. And the second sign that I will derive from it, some criteria or maybe some qualities of this animal which made this footstep. For example, let's suppose that it is a human being. So I will see the footstep of a human being. So first of all, straight away, I know that there was some human being walked here. And the second thing, it can give me indication of if it is big human being or small, young or old. okay, or even if he is ill or not. So for example, if footsteps are very close to each other, most likely he's very tired or ill. Am I right? So on this basis, this universe, even if it cannot describe God, but at least it will describe something related to God, something related to unseen. Am I right? Okay, how it can be. So for example, let's suppose that I'm a human being, okay, and for me to survive, I need to eat. And when I see the food available in the form of different delicious fruits and vegetables, straight away I understand two things, straight away. First is the one who made this all is very good knowledgeable, because he knows what is suitable for me. And the second thing, on top of that, he's very merciful, very gentle. Why? Because he made my food very delicious, very suitable to my taste. Am I right? So, in that way, we can say what is visible can make indication of invisible. Okay, so that is in terms of five senses. But in terms of the brain, now as you know, we have big conflicts about the brain. Am I right? Big conflicts about the brain. Okay, so some people, some of the groups which is available in our time, they actually say using brain in terms of theology, it is actually incorrect. Because if you know, the first ever sin that has been committed by using brain and making analogy. Am I right? So Shaitan, when Allah ordered him to make sajda to a human being, so what did he say? He made analogy. He said, how come I'm fire, so I'm better, and he's a soil, he's lower. Okay, so that is analogy, using brain. So they say, using brain in theology is not permissible. Okay, and we have second totally opposite group to them. What do they say? They say, actually, God, when He created the hands, He did create them for some wisdom. Okay, so now if you see someone saying, do not work, do not walk, and do not work, do not seek for your income, you say that he is insane. Why? Because as long as God created your hands, means the wisdom behind that is you have to work. Am I right? I think you are a very wanted person. Anyway, so that is one thing. But then, so if that's the case about the limbs, so then what do you think about the brain? So brain is also something that created, and there is wisdom behind creating the brain. So you have to use it. Okay, so it is two exactly opposite ways. Okay, so the first group is Zahiri, the people who follow the text very literally, and the second is, you can say, the people who are very towards the intellect. Okay, and we used to have them long ago, and even now they are coming back in by different names and in different forms. So it is the Mu'tazila people. Okay, but then forget about all of that. First of all, anyone can help me to understand what is the brain. So because now we say, some groups say ignore your brain, some say the most important thing in the human being is his brain. So question, what is the brain? Sorry? Organ. Okay, so, okay, I agree with you. It is an organ. What is the brain?
It's a sponge that can collect information,
Okay,
realize the information,
okay.
and then give results.
So it is filter of an information.
Yeah.
Filter of an information. Filter of an information.
They use it's one action, but mostly is the controller of the whole body.
Okay, so we have two different brains actually. One is animalistic brain, and the second is, you can say, angelic brain, if it's possible to be told. So the animalistic brain, it is the brain that is responsible for your movements, that is controlling your body. Okay, I'm not talking about that one. So for example, when there will be danger, that brain orders you to protect yourself, to save yourself. run away. Okay, but I'm talking about different one, which is when you receive an information, so it comments on that information and either accepts it or either rejects it. So I'm talking about that brain. So what is aql? What is brain? So are we born with some certain organ, okay, which filters the information? So from the day one, when we were born, we do have that organ with us in terms of, so it can distinguish between false and truth. Or is it something, brain, is it something that we were born with no any organ, but it is just a white paper, and then by us living, we build up an experience and extra information, so then collection of that information, it will be settled as a principles, and in the future we call this information, which is written in our memory, as brain. So which one of them two, please? Yeah.
I was going to say, from birth you have like, babies can do things like grabbing or what, like making foot movements and stuff.
It is amnestic brain, isn't it? I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about
They
the
can
filter
also
of
feel love for
information.
them and like they recognise the mum's voice and they can feel love, sort of thing.
It's
They know, like if they hear the mum's voice, they feel safe and stuff.
No, okay. But thing which makes you to eat and makes you to survive and love and dislike, so all of that is animalistic brain. So we share that brain with the rest of animals. But on top of that, we have something extra. So for example, have you seen two, for example, monkeys inviting each other, for example, to banana? I say yes, maybe. Because they do enjoy, they do have that brain. But have you seen two monkeys speaking about, for example, Plato? Okay, and then the philosophy behind the beauty of sunrise, for example. So it is something only specifically belongs to the human being. So there should be something, some organ which is producing that. And that organ that we call brain. So what is that brain?
It's how we were brought up.
Okay, so it is just information, just principles. Am I right? Okay, so there is no such a separate thing called brain, isn't it? Okay.
Character and personality.
Sorry?
Character and personality.
So actually, according to Islam, brain designs the shape of your personality. Okay, so the information will be filtered through your brain. Okay, and any information that hasn't been rejected will be settled into the deep, you can say, I think it's subconsciousness. So that will create, that will design the shape of your character. Okay, so brain, maybe you can say designer or creator of your character. Yes, I agree with you, yes, on this point, yes.
I was going to say, everyone has a natural fitra.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so fitra is another name of brain. I agree with you, okay, okay. So then what is that fitra?
To recognize your creator.
So everyone has that, isn't it? So Quran says that everyone has that. So then, but then not everyone recognizes. So
Because their lifestyle.
because of, but then the fitra that Quran speaks about, that is non-changeable. Okay, so that's slightly different to the fitra that Rasulullah speaks. It's just, but anyway, it's a good point, yeah. Okay, so then it is two opinions actually. Okay, so some scholars say brain is proper separate organ, which is responsible to filter the information. It is the same as the tongue. So when you eat, so your tongue is responsible to distinguish the tastes. Am I right? So that's how we have some organ which is called brain, and this organ is responsible to distinguish what is right and what is wrong. Okay? And the second group of scholars say, actually, it is not such a thing. There is no any thing called brain, but it is only human being is born with white paper, and then by living, he will build up an experience. So that experience will write the principles on the paper. So that principles will be the basement of the person in terms of reacting with the environment. And that what, so according to the second opinion, brain is nothing except a memory. which has been supported by a lot of observation since you was born. Okay? And third group of people say, it's majority of Ahlus Sunnah, we say there is something called fitrah. And fitrah is not a knowledge. Fitrah is not recognizing something or someone, but fitrah is something that you born with. What is that? For example, let's suppose that I have a mobile phone here. Okay, I have a mobile phone here. And I want to use it to eat an ice cream. Can I do it? So it will straight away reject. Am I right? Or I want to ride it. Am I right? So is it possible? No. Or I want to ride with it, on the board. So fitrah rejects that. Okay? But then, somehow, for you, in order to make your mobile phone into the spoon, you have to add up some extras. Then you can use it as a spoon. But as long as it is in its initial status, you cannot use it as a spoon. Or you cannot ride it. So you have to add some extras. And after that, you can use it in the purpose that you want. Okay, so that's why, if you know, for example, you mentioned that fitrah is to recognize God. So we say fitrah does not recognize anything, but it accepts or does not accept. So because we human beings, we have been created, each single human being, atheist and believer, according to our fitrah. So our fitrah has some shape. Okay, for example, the size of this. Okay, and then I will say to you, I brought a big elephant. Please, can you place it in the hand? You say no. Why? Because it does not go in there. So then crush it, open it. So then elephant goes in. So that's how our fitrah does not accept. When you see there is no creator, straight away you say impossible. But is it because you have some knowledge? You was born with some knowledge. We say no, because your fitrah, the shape of what you have been created with, it is too small or it is too big to receive this information. So that is not matching. Okay, for example, you have a glove, you put in your hand into the glove. Or you put in your foot into the glove. So glove has got its own size and its own shape. So only something which goes in it is the hand. Okay? But we do not say that because glove has got an information software which says there is hand, there is fingers, fingertips, nails. It's not because of that. But it has got its own shape and size. So that's what fitrah is. Okay? That's what fitrah is according to the Ahlus Sunnah majority of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Okay? So that's what we can call as aql. Okay? And what is that shape? Give me an example. I will say to you, please can you give me the date of birth of yourself, please?
Me?
Yeah.
20th December 1989.
89. Okay, so then you was born actually before your grandfather, because your grandfather was born 10 years after you. You see, he is laughing. So he doesn't need to think. He doesn't need to filter the information. So straight away he's rejecting. Why not? Because elephant is not fitting into the cup. So his fitrah is rejecting. Okay, so that's what we call as aql. So aql is not an information, but it is something that you was born with, and it has got its own size and shape. And only the information which is correct, that will fit into that. And the information which is incorrect, your fitrah will reject straight away. Unless, if you destroy it, or you add some extras, then you can use it on the purpose that you want. So that's what Rasulullah says, each single person is born according to the fitrah. And then his parents and environments, they convert him to whatever they convert him to. Okay, so that's what aql is. Okay, which says that it is separate organ. It is the same as a tongue. Okay, it's actually the Ash'ari position. And the second is, they say it is some list of principles which has been set up by each single person experimenting and experiencing in his life, observing in his life. And by the way, when each single principle, for example, baby, when baby is born, will see something flashing. And then baby will put in the hand into it and he will burn himself. Next time, something again flashing, he's afraid now because of the previous experience. So he will do this, okay, and he will touch it and it screams. So it's not doing. Means not each single flashing thing is burning. And another experience of the same thing, third, fourth, and now it became proper principle. Okay, so by having that type of several experiences, person will build up principles which will be settled, and he will be working, and he will be doing according to that principles subconsciously. So that's what called brain, according to the second group of people, and it is the ancient Greek philosophers as well as some of the new ones, especially the German ones. They do follow this school of thought. And we, as Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the majority, we say that the apple is actually something related to the fitrah, and the fitrah is something that you was born with. It is not separate thing to you. Okay, and again, it is not yourself. Okay, so anyway, so that is actually a brain. But then, in Islamic theology, now the most common understanding of a Muslims, they say using brain in aqidah is not permissible. Okay, so for example, if anything related to aqidah, mas'ala of aqidah, about God or messenger or angels, and you will use your brain, they say is not permissible. Why? Because you have to take the text from Quran and Sunnah literally with no, you can say, involving your brain. It is one school of thought. And the second school of thought, they say actually everything is understandable by your brain. So you have to break down everything into the elements and then involve your brain into testing it. And then you will come with the correct conclusion. Okay? So anyway, and the Ahlus Sunnah is exactly in between. We do not neglect the brain because, if you know, even just by going back to the text, Allah gives very huge importance to the brain. Am I right?
Yes.
Where does He do it? Excellent. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. So if brain wouldn't be important, so then why Allah would refer us to the brain? Am I right? But then, we as Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we do not say that for each single thing go back to the text, as well as we do not say for each single thing use your brain. Okay, we say brain is good guide till some certain extension. And after that, brain has to take its limits. So what do we say as Ahlus Sunnah? We say everything that is existing into two types. It is universe and something which does not follow into the principles of the universe. So anything which is in the universe, you can use your brain. But anything which does not follow or which does not go with the principles of the universe, you cannot use your brain. But you need text for that. Okay? So it is the same as you guys, for example, some of you want to go to, let's say, Switzerland. Okay, right now. So, but you have never been there. But then you can use your brain. How? Because it is in the same, you can say, geographical zone, and it is the same winter, and it's not far away. So most likely it's going to be cold. So then you will bag your, you will put into your bags something which is related to the winter. Am I right? But then I will say to you, you guys are going to Atlantis. Where Atlantis is? What is the weather in there? You don't have any knowledge, and you don't know where exactly it is. So then you need information from the person who has been there. Okay, so it is the same analogy about the universe and something which is beyond the universe. So anything which is in the universe, you can use your brain. You follow the principle of cause and effect. And anything beyond the universe, I do not mean in terms of it is outside of universe. I mean it is the things which does not follow the principle of cause and effect, or which does not follow the principles of the universe. So in terms of that issues, you cannot use your brain because you don't know. You don't know to which thing you have to compare it. Okay? But yet we do have groups who actually go to that extension to compare the unseen to what is visible. Okay, so for example, one of the philosophers of that group say, God definitely has to move. Why? Because we all agreed that God is alive, and the difference between alive and dead thing is movement. Means God moves. We say person is comparing something which he observed to something which is non-understandable by brain. So it is incorrect analogy. So brain has to stop just right to its own limits. Okay, so that is about the brain. But then, in terms of the principles of the brain, we say there are three main principles of brain and three only analogies. Okay, have you studied about the analogies, the rational analogies? How many rational analogies do we have? How many types of them? Okay, so now in our time, actually the most popular one, or only the one that exists, is you can say it is in Arabic language we call it istiqra. So anyway, so there are three types of analogy. One analogy is you do have a general principle and then you apply it into the details of it. Okay? And the second is you compare two small, you can say, details into each other. Okay? And then you apply the principle which is applicable on this one to the second one. I'm going to give you an example. And third one is you analyze the details of the main whole body, and by analyzing it, then you set up a general principle. Okay? So the third one is the most common in our time. So the first one, very first one, the example of the first one is that I gave you. Okay, so God actually moves. Why? Because the principle says each single alive body has to move. That is the general principle. Okay? And the second is the fiqhi principle. Okay, for example, let's say that I have two cups. One is wine and one is alcohol. We don't have nothing about alcohol, nor in Quran and nor in Hadith, which gives the literal meaning. But it is described in Hadith. Okay, so about wine, Allah says it is filth. Do not touch it. Am I right? Okay, so it is prohibited. But then when you look into its meaning, into its reason why it's prohibited, so Prophet says anything that intoxicates is prohibited. And then we check this one, alcohol. So it has the same reason, means whatever is applicable on this, which is prohibition, is prohibited to drink, applicable on alcohol also. Okay, so that is second type of analogy, and that is fiqhi analogy. And third type is by observing details, you make a statement which will be applicable on whole. Okay, for example, you say, each time when you find an atom, definitely it has to have three parts in it. Okay, so electrons and neutrons and protons and all of them. Okay, but then we didn't have a chance to check each single detail of this. But then we did majority. So then we say, wherever in the universe there is atoms, there have to be three parts of it. And this actually is the most popular in our time. And maybe our civilization and our academical progress based on the third analogy. And the first two is just ignored. Okay, anyway. Third way, because if you remember, we were talking about the sources of an information. So the first was five senses, and the second was brain. And we spoke about the brain. What is the brain? And what's the limits of the brain? And third one is actually the information of a person. Okay, information of a person. And definitely it has got its own conditions to follow. For example, do I have anyone here believes on UFOs? Yes, I had one actually. Sorry? Anyone believes on UFO? Unknown flying objects, you know, like people from moon, green creatures. Do I have anyone who believes on them? Because it's also, because the people who believe on it, they should have some source of information. Am I right? So then maybe some of them was asleep, and then I did make up a mask, green mask, and then I woke him up with my stuff, you know. Okay, and then I had a mic, okay, and then which was connected to his, you know, hearing, and I started dictating. After putting him asleep, and then I just disappeared. So next day he came out, and then he said, actually there is unknown flying objects, which is coming from Bermuda Triangle or somewhere there, you know. So we say that will be source of information only if person who is giving that information is reliable. He has to meet some conditions. Okay, so if he does not meet the conditions, so his statement and his witnessing will be just ignored. It could be right or it may not be. But because he's not meeting the condition of a person who can make that type of statements, we are going to neglect his information. But don't we have to spend a time to test maybe he's right? We say there are millions of that type of information is coming. So do I have to spend a time on each single of them? No, of course not. Okay, so anyway, these are the main sources of information related to the theology. And then we have three types, you can say, parts of the theology. Theology is concerned only about them three things. The first is God, meaning of God, and what we should understand under the meaning of God. And the second is prophethood. And everything is related to the prophet. Can prophet lie? Can prophet commit sins? And can he? And all of them questions. And what prophet has to prove that he is a prophet. And third thing is the information that is brought by prophet that cannot be tested by our eyes. So them are three parts of the Aqidah and theology. Okay, let's talk about each of them very briefly. So first question. So, Aqidah, theology is split up into three things. Don't worry, it's not UFO. So it is three parts. First is God, and the second is prophet. Third is unseen. The information that prophet brings about unseen. So prophet says, by the way, when you die, you are going to see some angel who is responsible to take your rule. Now, do we have to accept it or not? And if we have to accept it, in which way we have to accept? So that is the thing. So now first question. When I say God, what do you understand? Is it a man that is hanging on that cross? Okay. Or is it that cow? Okay. Which is worshipped? Or is it that white elephant? Okay. Or is it that a person which looks like Adam alayhi salam, Prophet Adam? So what God is in your understanding?
There's no image.
No image. So God does not have shape. Why do you say so?
Because it's a hadith.
Hadith. Okay, mashallah. Which hadith? God does not have image. Where is this hadith? No, I told you, do not worry, it was not UFO. When you're scared, you will give strange information. Yes, please.
We know about God, about his feature, which is Asma Husna. His character.
Okay.
It is not important for us as believers to know what is the shape of God or anything.
No, I think so.
The arsh, or is the arsh, or what, you know.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
my understanding, my simple understanding, that we, as human beings, we don't have to think about what is the shape of God.
But okay, so we don't have to. But what about if I think?
It's not going to, benefit us.
Okay.
See?
Okay.
But what we have to understand is his Asma Husna, that his features,
Names.
his names,
Okay.
and what he can do.
Yeah.
This is the most important, but it's not important to know his shape.
Okay. So when you say not important, means you don't have to. But what about if you will? Is it okay?
It's okay if you want to go to do this
Extension is okay.
extension.
Okay.
Some
Okay.
scholars say no. You don't have to think about this.
Okay, good point. Fair enough. Yes, please.
Some scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah have gone down that line of describing God,
Yeah,
and
big group of scholars. Yes. Yeah.
they were condemned in some sense.
But actually, all of them groups that you're talking about, she disagrees. All of them disagree with her. Am I right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, because she says no shape. All of them say there is shape. There is size. There is shape. Actually. Okay.
But
So.
the majority of scholars, of the classical scholars,
Yeah.
disagree with
Of course,
Ibn
of course,
Taymiyyah.
of course, yeah, of course, yeah, of course, yeah. So anyway, the first part of theology is about God. What human beings should know about God. Okay? And what is necessary to know about God for you in order to be a believer, and what is prohibited for you to go into, and what is recommended. 3 things necessary for you to know, and if you don't know, you may not be in as a believer. And the second thing, prohibited for you to think and discuss about. And third thing is recommended. For example, I will ask you, let's suppose that I'm a new convert, and then actually I don't know that God has an attribute called self-respecting, aziz. According to one translation, it is self-respecting. Means Allah will offer you a guidance. If you do not take it, Allah will not come to beg you, because He's aziz. Am I right? So, some new convert believes that God is one. Okay, God is not created, so God is not flesh and skin. God cannot be slapped. Okay, God cannot be catched. But then he says, but God is humble. So is it accepted from him as a convert or not? So that's what theology will answer. Okay, so there are some basic information about God. Person will not be believer if he does not know some of it or if he neglects it. For example, we say oneness of God. Someone says Muhammad is prophet as well as Jesus, as well as Moses, and all of them. But actually, one of them, for example, Jesus is coming from the God of mercy, but Noah is from God of anger. So there are 2 gods. Is he believer or not? Means oneness of God is something that person is not excused for not knowing. Am I right? Okay? Excellent. So the things about God that is compulsory to be known, there are several. There are a list of things. Okay? So what are them? So maybe first of all of them is that God has an existence, absolute existence, which is not depending on anything. So even if God wouldn't create us, He would be existing. So His existence is absolute. But, for example, my existence is depending on the space, on the time, on the food, father, mother, and the rest of the cause and effect things. But God's existence is absolute. And the second thing, God has a power. Okay? Why? Because the person who does not have power is forced to do things. Am I right? And the person who is forced to do things is disabled and weak. Weak cannot be God. Okay? And there are a list of things that you have to know in order to be a believer. Okay? So, just for you to say God, you have to straight away understand all of them things. Okay? So that is first thing. And the second thing, there are for us to attribute to God. For example, what is the color of God? Each single existing thing is either has some color or colorless. There is no color. For example, water. Okay? So is God white? Or is He black? Or is He red? Or is He something that, like a glass, does not have a color? What is He? We say no any of them could be attributed, because all of them are the attributes of the matter, and God is not a matter. Another question, what about the smell of God? Okay, all of the prophets, they used to smell very nice, naturally, without putting on the perfume. And we put on the perfume and then we smell well. And sometimes when we are ill or very sweating, we may smell differently. So what is the smell of God? We say it's prohibited to attribute any of them to God. So by attributing, person can leave Islam. Okay, or another thing, does God need, you can say, something or somewhere to exist? We say, as soon as you attribute need to God, it takes you out of belief also. Why? Because the thing that needs cannot be God. Because God, everyone needs Him, but He does not need no one and nothing. Okay? Or another thing, does God have parts? We say it's prohibited to attribute parts. Or does God have a size? So for example, 5 billion light years tall and 6 billion light years of width. So does He have some limits? We say only the matter, created thing has a limit. Okay? So anyone who believes that God has a limit will not be classified as in Iman. Okay? So there are group list of things that is prohibited to be attributed to God. Okay? Some of them very clearly mentioned in Quran and Sunnah. Some of them is known naturally. Okay? So for example, if you remember, when Qurayshi mushriks came to the Prophet ﷺ asking, can you describe your God? What is he? Is he from gold or is he from silver? Okay, or is he from honey? So Allah revealed ayah, neglecting the questions, not speaking about the substance of God, okay, but speaking about His attributes. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Tell them that God is one, Allahu Samad. Allah is the one that everyone needs Him, but He is independent, doesn't need anything. لَمْ يَلِدْ, He didn't give birth, وَلَمْ يُولَدْ, and He was not born. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, and nothing was comparable to Him. But then, their question was neglected, am I right? Because they didn't ask about these attributes, but they did ask about the substance of God. What is He from? So why God neglected the question? Because it is naturally known that the thing which is made from gold, okay, thing which made from gold cannot be God. Okay, because of many things. Why? First of all, God needs to be in some space. It means space is bigger than gold. Okay, for Him to exist somewhere, He needs to occupy. His back has to be settled somewhere, and so on and so on. Okay, so that's why it is naturally known thing, so Allah neglected the question, and then God gave an answer for something that is more beneficial for them to know. Okay, so that is actually about God. So, about God there are three things. One is, it is compulsory upon you to know in order to be a believer. And the second thing is prohibited for you to attribute it to God in order to be a believer. And in between them, there are some certain issues. If you do not know, you are still within a belief, but it would be better for you to know. Okay? So them are three things. As well as, in terms of the prophethood, we have the same thing again. What is a prophet? It's my question to you. When I say to you prophet, what do you understand under the prophet? What is a prophet?
Someone
Yes.
selected from God.
Select.
Good
Okay.
character,
Okay.
Good character.
Yeah.
To give a message
Okay.
given to him by inspiration from God
Okay.
to his own people
Okay.
to move within a certain constraint.
Okay.
What is good for them and what is bad for them.
Okay. Okay.
What will happen if they are good and what will happen if they mistake.
Okay. 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 Excellent. Excellent.
But he had no book.
Okay.
It doesn't come with a book. It's a dynamic prophet. Messenger is different.
Okay. 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 Excellent. Any other? Excellent. I agree with you. Prophet. What is a prophet? And why do we need the prophet? Yes.
It's not very understanding.
use of that sea
Okay.
to deceive
Okay.
the humankind.
Okay.
To bring people to close to God or convey their message vice versa.
Okay, so according to you, prophet is someone that is responsible only to bring the information, knowledge of unseen
Unseen
to the universe.
to the universe.
But what do you think about existence of a prophet who is responsible to inform the people about the universe itself? Is it the duty of prophets or not?
He is responsible for his for the order he gave and received. He's not responsible for everything. He's only responsible with what he's been told to do.
Oh, of course, I do not disagree. But my question, could that be that his responsibility could be the universe, knowledge of the universe? For example, prophet that's responsible for geography.
No, he's not responsible for that.
Cannot be.
No, I don't think he's responsible. He's responsible for more like...
Or, for example, prophet that's responsible about cooking. Cooking, what do they call this subject?
Olive.
Sorry?
Olive.
Yeah, so
Oh.
cooking, food.
catering.
Yeah, chef.
Chef.
So prophet that's responsible to teach the human being how to cook and what to cook. Can it be?
I think prophet is responsible for the spiritual well-being of humankind.
Okay, excellent. Somehow, I agree with you. Okay, anything else, please? To understand the meaning of prophethood, we have to understand the meaning of religion, because prophet is responsible for the religion. Am I right?
Yeah.
So, what's the meaning of religion? Who knows?
A way of life.
Way of life. Way in the life.
Where is the life?
No.
Oh yeah, way of life.
Way of life.
Yeah.
Way of life. So then, cooking, isn't it in our way of life, or is it in the next street?
In
Do you
terms of
cook in your
halal and
house?
haram, like, yes.
Or in terms of what is permissible and also, but what about how to cook? Is it in our life or not?
Yes.
Means you disagree with him. Prophets, it could be that cooking could be duty of prophet to teach. Am I right?
Could be, but it isn't.
It doesn't
Well,
apply
what do you
to
mean could be, but
it doesn't apply to everyone in the
no, I'm not
same
talking
way.
everyone. I'm talking, is it possible that there was a prophet whose duty was to teach how to cook a food? Could be.
Allahu A'lam.
Could be. Who said could be? Answer his question then, okay?
But excuse me.
He never refers to anything other than the word of God.
Okay, inshallah. Good point. We're coming back inshallah to this.
Most
Yes?
of the prophets have told their own people what to eat and what not to eat.
In terms of halal and haram. Okay.
It couldn't.
No, for us to say most of them, we need to know what exactly each single prophet did. Prophet says there was 124,000 Anbiya. For us to say that most of them, they had to teach us halal and haram, we have to check what each single of them did, which is impossible. So, something to consider. But somehow it's a good point actually. Religion is establishment. Religion is an institution. It is establishment by implementing which, by your own choice, you are going to gain the success and happiness of this world as well as hereafter. Means, what is the happiness of this world is, the happiness of this world is avoiding the illnesses, okay, avoiding the hunger, avoiding the cold weather by having houses, okay, as well as avoiding the conflicts between the people, which is politics. Okay, so all of them are included. Even the cooking is included. Even the building the houses is included. For example, what is the explanation of the contemporary scholars, physicians or whatever, historians, to explain how human being started cooking a food? They say, by the way, a human being used to live, okay, as Homo sapiens, as the first Homo sapiens, very early, you can say monkey/man, okay, used to live in the forest, okay, in the caves, okay. So then there was a fire in the forest, which did kill many animals. And after that, they went back to the forest and they saw dinosaurs or whatever, the animals, lying, and they were grilled. Masala grilled mammoths. So they tested, they said, mashallah, good. Where is the ketchup, Just put on some ketchup and then we'll have proper, curry. So they said that is the reason how human beings learned cooking. We Muslims say it is the duty of the prophets to teach how to cook and what to cook. Okay? As well as building houses, it is the responsibility of the prophets. As well as the treatment from the diseases, it is the responsibility of the prophets. Okay? Do you know Cleopatra? She was very, very engaged into the different science, And one of the science that she used to love is the science of creating the most powerful poisons. They say she, in one of the occasions, she was trying the most powerful poison, so she killed over 800 people just in order to find out the most poisonous herb. Okay, so now question, as you know, we have millions of different grasses and plants and trees, am I right? Seed trees as well as the ground trees, as well as we have thousands of different diseases. So if we carry on testing each single herb for each single disease, so then life, you can say the life of a human being on earth will not be enough for us to find treatment for the illnesses, am I right? As well as some of the treatments is not on a single tree, but it is combination of 20 or 30 different herbs. So how do we know that knowledge? We say the main principles has been taught to us by prophets, because it was their duty to teach us that. Okay, so from here we understand that all of us have to study Aqidah, because maybe, mashallah, you did very well in terms of recognizing God, but you didn't do perfectly in terms of knowing the meaning of prophet and what's the responsibility of the prophets, according to Muslims. Okay, and so that's how actually the theology carries on about what is necessary for the prophets in terms of physical necessity as well as duty in front of God. What do they have to do and what is impossible for them to do? For example, lying is impossible. Why? Because if prophet can lie, so then how we can trust his message? So prophet lying, it is in indirect, you can say insult. Indirect, you can say insult of God. Why? Because God was so insane to choose a liar. Okay. So anyway, so there are things which is compulsory to be attributed to prophets, and there are things which is prohibited, impossible for the prophets to have, and there are something in between. Okay, which is better for us to know. But if you don't know, it does not scratch your belief. Okay, and then the third part of theology, it speaks about unseen. What is the unseen? It is the message that brought by prophet, speaking about something that we cannot check, we cannot test, and we cannot smell, we cannot touch. Okay, for example, prophet says, by the way, people in their grave, they will be resurrected for one more time, before the day of judgment. So now, is it something that I can measure by my brain? We say no. So then what to do with it? So theology will teach you what to do with that type of, you can say, narrations from the prophet. Okay, so anyway, let's coming back to our initial position. Theology, it is the subject that teaches you them three questions. God, prophet, and the message of the prophet, which we call unseen. So it is ilahiyat, God, and nubuwat, or some of the scholars, they combine nubuwat and sam'iyat into one, but then anyway, it's more accurate to know the prophet and prophethood separately, and then the message that is brought by prophets. Okay, so anyway, that is, you can say very briefly, the explanation of the subject called theology. Subject called theology. Okay, so if you have any questions, I am ready to discuss. They say if no one is asking, so everyone understood or no one understood. But I don't mind, yes.
And you know how at the beginning you were saying about things that we learn through experience, like when you start our
Yes.
brain.
Yeah.
For example, taking the example of cooking, would we not learn that through experience?
There are main principles. Main principles have been taught by prophets. So, for example, now we have a paracetamol. So that means the person who designed paracetamol is a prophet. We say no, but prophets are responsible to give us the main principles, saying that herbs can treat, and then they will demonstrate it. Or otherwise, how do you know that our ancestors, one of the 10,000 years ago, grandfather became ill, and he understood that, oh, by the way, herb can treat. And then exactly, this herb can treat this. So it is the duty of the prophet. He will give us the general principles, and then to implement and analyze to derive more treatments, it is the duty of the people who will inherit that knowledge. Okay? Yeah.
Some of my teachers, they say that the Prophet Muhammad, so he has knowledge of everything in this world.
Yeah.
God has given him that knowledge of everything.
Yeah. It is the opinion of Imam Ghazali and the majority of Maturidis and Ash'aris, or all of the Maturidis and Ash'aris, correct, yes. And the second opinion is? Yeah, so from here we understand that we have to study Aqidah properly, because according to some of the people, Muslims in our time, a prophet looks like a postman. Postman brings a mail, okay, from the person who sent it, but he does not know what is in there. So he says, whatever is there, you know it better actually. And then he just leaves it and then goes. Okay, we say in that case God is insane. Okay, so he couldn't choose a right person. Okay, so we say the superiority of... My question to you, if you know, there are 5 top prophets according to Islam. Am I right? 5 top prophets. Do I have Adam alayhi salam in there?
Sorry?
5 top prophets. Am I right? So it is Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, and Prophet Muhammad. Am I right? 5 top, Ulul Azm. 5 years. Top ones. And then Adam alayhi salam is not one of them. Am I right? What was the superiority of Adam alayhi salam on top of the angels? Sajda, what was that for? For the knowledge. Okay, and if prophet who is not one of the top ones, if his knowledge was much more than the knowledge of the angels, so then what do you think about the top 5 ones? It's much more, you know. Okay. Or another example, Yaqub alayhi salam. Okay, Israel alayhi salam, Yaqub alayhi salam. What Allah says about him? Allah says, وَإِنَّهُ لَعَلِيمٌ لِمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Yaqub is very knowledgeable about the things that we taught him, but majority of the people, they don't know, they do not assume. They do not evaluate his knowledge. And he is not yet one of the 5 top prophets. Somehow, right? Means top 5 prophets, their knowledge is much above all of them. Yeah, so we shouldn't doubt on the knowledge of the prophets. Okay, even some of the people actually say if prophets would be in our time, they wouldn't be able to handle the knowledge and etc. Prophets, you know, our knowledge in comparison to the knowledge of the, you can say, less knowledgeable prophet, is just like one drop in the ocean, maybe. Yes, please.
Yeah. One of my friends, they were a bit skeptical about, maybe this is going away from the topic, but about the beauty of the prophets of Allah.
Yeah.
And they say it's well established that Yusuf al-Islam carries half of the world's beauty. And when it comes to the Prophet Muhammad, would he have more than Yusuf al-Islam?
No, it's the masail that if someone does not know, it doesn't take him out of belief, isn't it? Yeah, it does not. Yeah, so but in terms of Rasulullah and the beauty, the physical and the spiritual and the moral and academical beauty, because being one of the top ones, it necessitates for the person to have all of that beauties in one. Yes, please.
where did you get this information about the 5 top prophets? My understanding from Surah Al-Baqarah, the verse before last. لا نفرق بين أحد من الرسل. وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. I haven't seen the Quran anywhere where there is a 5 top prophets.
No, Ulul Azm. What's the meaning of Ulul Azm, you know? Ulul Azm min al-Rusul. Allah repeats it in many occasions. So Ulul Azm min al-Rusul, we do have some ahadith from Rasulullah, maybe the chain may not be very strong, but we have from Ibn Abbas and some of other Sahaba with authentic chains in which they say Ulul Azm is Fulan, 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 and 5 of them. Now, you can find it, you can read the Arabic books easily, isn't it? So if you can just go back to the ayah where Allah says Ulul Azm and check it with Ibn Kathir. He gives you all of the opinions. Some of the scholars say that Ulul Azm are all of them, but the majority of Ahlus Sunnah, we say that Ulul Azm are top 5. Ulul Azm, yes. Yes, please.
As a scholar of Islamic theology, do you think that there is a struggle between evolution and creation?
Evolution, the meaning of evolution in terms of like, in terms of a human being going through evolution is 100%, it does not go with our belief. Am I right? But change of a human being, 100% it is there. For example, the first ever human being was created and he was very tall. Am I right? So for example, even the contemporary knowledge do not deny it. So for example, even the ancient animals used to be very huge. Ancient trees used to be very huge. Am I right? And even if you go to, there is a museum in America. I forgot. It's so actually they discovered like, you know, this, what do they call this bone? Sorry?
Thigh bone.
And the picture is there, is authentic. So then it's when you take that as like and then they created the human being, they painted the human being, and he was something about 7 meters. So it does not crash with the science that human being used to be tall, but maybe it may crash with maybe Christian and Jewish, you can say, gospels, because according to them, as far as I know, human being used to be short and human being is growing. But according to our belief, that human being used to be very tall, and then he is changing to become shorter and shorter. But then in terms of human being going through evolution, it is impossible, because Rasulullah said in authentic hadith that Adam was created in his own form, 30 meters tall. So it cuts off any other possibilities. So human being first was something, and then, but the Prophet says, Adam was created in his own initial form, natural form, not from something. And even some of my teachers actually holds an opinion in which he says this hadith to exclude the rest of the animals. So the rest of the animals haven't been created in its own initial natural form, but through stages. But in terms of a human being, definitely evolution crashed into our belief, yes.
I have another question. If somebody like me, someone who's young and stuff, wants to start reading about Islamic theology, where do you think I can start? Like, what easy Arabic and or English books that I can read?
You know, there are 2 types of knowledge. One is just knowledge based on research and information, and the second is sacred knowledge. Sacred knowledge is taken from a human being. If you remember, Rasulullah all the time emphasizes that the person who is present, he should pass it on to the person who is absent. So we take the knowledge from the people. That how back to one of the authentic sources, who will go back to Prophet. As well as Rasulullah said, if you remember, that Jews split into 71 groups, and Christians split into 72. And my nation, Muslims, are going to split into 73. And only one are going to paradise and the rest to the hell. Means, so the book that you buy from the bookshop about theology, it is definitely from one of them 73 groups, but which one of them? Is it the one which takes? Okay, so that's why I recommend, if you are interested to discover your belief, definitely you have to take it from authentic sources. Authentic source means two things: authentic scholar, teacher, as well as authentic text, book.
Can you give examples?
In terms of the texts, so it is the text that has been experienced and taught and learned for a very long time and confirmed by authentic scholars that it is reliable. So not any new books. For example, let's suppose that some book has been published, let's say 50 years ago. So within the last 50 years, we didn't have any scholar which was very high caliber. Okay, so maybe the new published book could be right or could be wrong. Okay, so then I'm not going to gamble my soul about something which could be right and could be wrong. But what about the book which had been written, for example, 1,200 years ago or even more before that? And during all of that time, we had thousands of authentic scholars, am I right? And all of them approved. They said, mashallah, good, 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 good. Okay, so it is 5 stars over thousands of years. And the author is actually, for example, a student of very high caliber tabi'is as well as junior sahaba. Okay, so do you think that that author has a right to be authentic and reliable? Of course. So that is the author called Imam Abu Hanifa. And the book that have been praised, his books called Al-Wasiyya, his dictation. Okay, and another book called Aqidah Tahawiyya, but it is a book dictation of Imam Abu Hanifa. Okay, but narrator is Imam Tahawi, as well as Al-Fiqh Al-Akbar, as well as Al-Risala ila Uthman Al-Batti. It is only the book that Abu Hanifa has written by his own hand. And during over 1,000 years, scholars praise these books. Yes.
Would you say the only way to learn these books is to sit with a teacher? Like
Only,
that has a standard.
Only learning it from authentic teachers. Because, you know, for example, I will say to you, by the way, in the hell, someone will come saying, you know, he said, by the way, you are going to the hell. Okay? Or second person will come saying, oh, but he said, by the way, the one who dislikes you is going to the hell. So it is different interpretations. Okay? But then, how do I know what did I say? So by me explaining it. So that's how, for example, Abu Hanifa taught his book, and he taught its meaning also. And then the one who received that from him, he did pass it on to the next generation, and that's how ending up in our time. Did you understand? Yeah. But it's not that, for example, okay, I'm a scholar, I will just go to pick up Aqidah Tahawiyya, and I never studied the Aqidah Tahawiyya through authentic chain, which goes back to Imam Tahawi, but then I will just write interpretation, saying Tahawi means this, Tahawi means that. So it is only I'm guessing, am I right? But what author means, so it's his authentic students know. His authentic students will explain. And that's how, by having chain back to the author actually. Yeah?
What about somebody who has not the mental faculty to understand all these intricate points of theology?
Yeah.
And it's very simple and a very faithful Muslim.
Yeah.
But he hasn't got that capacity to understand all these details.
Okay, of course, yeah.
And he has, passed his life. And there are a lot of important things that he shouldn't know, or should know, ought to know, but he's not capable.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to him?
So we say...
Actually, if you want to regain this, to make himself...
As long as person is holding his initial crystalline pure nature, he's not responsible to go into the details. But unfortunately in our time it's impossible to hold that initial crystalline pure nature. Why? Because you, for example, just was born, so then you are very crystalline pure. And further, you go to see on Google, when you are driving, people speak to you. When you come to the university, teacher speaks to you about the theological. So definitely you are packed up with different informations and different knowledge about God, messenger, and unseen, you know. Okay, so if you can guarantee that you are not affected by anything, I guarantee that your belief is pure, untouchable, it's perfectly fine, according to everyone. Okay, but if we are affected by newspapers and even, for example, now we have a movie called Avatar. I say that is perfect explanation of Hinduism. Am I right? People who watch it definitely subconsciously they receive that information. So now it is compulsory upon him to free himself. If he wants to be Hindu, that's his choice. But if he wants to stay as a Muslim, he, first of all, he shouldn't supposed to go to that movie first. But if he did go, now he has to study in terms of ruhs are moving, the spirit moving from one body to the other body. Is it possible or not according to Islam, you know? So now it's impossible to detach yourself from the information because now is the age of information. Okay? So, because you are unable to free yourself or because you are unable to protect yourself from incorrect information, now it is compulsory for you to build up your correct information also. So now I say no excuse for the person who is living in the city or who has access to the information through newspaper or TV or maybe magazines or internet. It's compulsory upon him to study all of the 3 parts of theology. No excuse. Aqidah Ijmaliya will not say it. Okay, so that's all. If you have any questions, you can email us or you can maybe join our Facebook or inshallah we can just communicate further inshallah. Thank you very much.